Good evening. My name is Sarah Shan, and these are my colleagues Grant Jones, Madeline Peacock, and Victoria Sawyer. According to the Education Commission of States, there's a new trend in American states that students are required to take 4 years of higher level math courses. While these courses are important, they push away other courses that are just as important, such as life skill classes, which teach students on how to take care of themselves and be able to be a productive member of society. This then leads to the question of to what extent does public secondary education in the US prepare students for necessary skills for future life?
The answer to this question that our team proposes is that public secondary education classes are currently underrepresented in the United States, and for the betterment of students, they should be better implemented into public secondary education systems throughout the United States.
In the past, life skills classes such as home economics, or commonly referred to as home ec, was meant to teach students how to take care of themselves and others. However, this class is not executed properly. It has ultimately led to the class being split by genders, leaving the females to learn how to cook and how to do laundry and iron and other household things, whereas men were taught how to do more manlier things, so-called, such as carpentry. And this was eventually shut down by the feminist movement as it was seen as biased and sexist.
Along with secondary students learning about proper nutrition and physical education, these students also need to have a sufficient understanding of the health skills they would need in the future. One solution that the United States has done to address the increasing issue of secondary students' lack of knowledge and health skills was implementing health literacy classes such as HIV education courses within secondary schools. However, these HIV education courses have demonstrated to potentially cause the spread of misinformation about health skills among secondary students. A prime example of this is what is being taught in HIV classes in the state of Oklahoma. As displayed on the screen, the evidence from the University of South Carolina's nursing department represents the states that do not instruct their HIV course students on different sexual orientations. Taking into account of Oklahoma, their mandated HIV classes instruct secondary students that homosexual activity and among other activities as well that students may engage in with each other is the main source of students coming into contact with the AIDS virus. But the reality of this situation is far more complicated. In order for an individual to contract the AIDS virus, they would have to be sexually active in general, regardless of the gender of the party. Any unprotected sex with another individual who may have AIDS will contract the disease, which disproves Oklahoma's limited method of teaching secondary students about these serious issues. Continuing, referencing the comparison chart shown here, displaying the different sex education course requirements by each state from the University of South Carolina's nursing department, we can clearly see where the lack of proper health skills stems from. Focusing on the state of Wisconsin, their HIV classes only instruct students on abstinence, and students are not required to enroll in the class. But comparing the HIV classes in the state of California, they require students to take a HIV education class that instructs their students on a variety of course materials that will contribute towards secondary students' knowledge of proper health skills, including medically accurate information, contraception and abstinence information, and instruction on different sexual orientations.
Similar to the state regulation sex ed, there's also a state regulation that's found in financial education. Graded by John Peltier, who is the director for the Center for Financial Literacy at Champlain College, he graded each of the 50 states a grade A to F by how well they've implemented financial education into schools. Peltier gave 15 of these states a grade D or F due to the fact they're very modest or no requirements at all for students to not take a financial education related class before graduating from high school. This can then be detrimental to the students in these 15 states, as without the financial education, they would then be unable to improve their financial literacy, which according to Lucy Delgadillo is having the knowledge and skills regarding financial matters do things such as balancing a checkbook, finding and getting a job, in addition to planning in the future. Overall, this would mean that without the financial literacy, these students would then be unable to make the most beneficial decision during economic matters and then be unable to get the most out of a situation and gain the most money. And without that extra money, they may not have the guarantee and surability that these students will be able to pay for their necessities in order to live a life, like for example, being able to pay for food.
Based on the information, some potential solutions could be parents teaching their children at home on their own time. This solution is already heavily relied on as it's seen as one of the most basic goals of parenting. However, according to the Pew Research Center, there has been an increase in single to two working parent households, leading to the parents not have the time to teach their children the life skills that they need. On top of this, middle and high school students always have crazy schedules with school and extracurriculars such as sports and clubs. Another solution would be nationally requiring life skills education classes. Although this sounds great in theory, with students all across the nation taking the same class at the same time, learning the same skills to learn how to take care of themselves and others, this is not actually accomplishable due to the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which restricts education to the states rather than to be overseen and controlled by the federal and national government.
Based on these limitations, the best solution then would be to spread the information regarding the benefits of life skills education, which would then increase the awareness of benefits of life skill education, which would then go hand in hand with improving public opinion on the subject of life skills education due to the fact that before these opinions were negatively towards due to poorly executed subjects such as home economics. And based on that, would encourage lawmakers and education boards to require life skill classes in each state.
While this solution does in fact have many great qualities to it, it also has its limitations. Chief among those are budget constraints, as instituting a new class that requires resources and additional teachers to pay can put stress on already financially struggling school districts. Additionally, this class is not able to be enacted across the nation, as my colleague Grant previously explained. So this would have to be done on a state-by-state basis. However, by showing the incredible benefits of life skills education to students and society as a whole, school districts and education boards will have no logical choice but to improve society and their community by instituting these classes, such as in the case of Family and Consumer Sciences. A class that has been referred to in past as revamped home economics, Family and Consumer Sciences is a life skills education class. 7 top family and consumer sciences experts from universities across the nation, from California to Florida, define its goals as teaching students to care for their basic human needs, to care for their individual well-being, to be able to care for a family in a strong manner, and to be able to become a vital part of their community. It does this through very in-depth, hands-on formats that allow students to learn skills, but also to apply them to be able to use them ideally in the future. As seen in the image on the bottom of the slide, where students from Lowell Scott Middle School in Idaho are learning to cook, students learn these practical hands-on skills that allow them to make the neural connections to actually learn the skills. However, what you don't see in the image here is that these students have been learning throughout the rest of the course not only how to cook, but how to use nutrition facts and information on how to better care for their health, along with financial skills and resources that they have available to them to create a budget, to be able to afford nutritional food, and then plan meals that are not only food that they can cook, but is also food that will be good for their health, leading to a better quality of life in the future. In addition, Family and Consumer Sciences solve some of the previous issues with life skills classes, such as reinforced stereotypes. Even heavily reinforced stereotypes in the media, such as high school football players, as seen in this image from Oconee High School in Georgia, they are all able to learn to care for a family and to become a valuable member of the community by giving back to it, by living in a healthy manner and contributing to society as a whole. All students are able to have the opportunity to learn these life skills to make life better, not only for them, but for the people that they are around in the future.
If the United States is to implement modern life skill classes such as family and consumer sciences within secondary schools, students will gain practical life skills in health and finances and teach them to provide for themselves physically and socially. Encouraging this throughout all states will allow for consistency within the curriculum throughout all states so all students learn the same lessons and skills. These classes will also provide interesting learning material to keep students engaged and motivated to remember these life skills, want to continue developing them, and apply them outside of the classroom.
Here are some references for more information on life skills in secondary education. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I do have a question for each one of you. But we're going to actually start with Maddie.
Of course.
Maddie, describe how the content of your presentation changed as a result of your discussions in the group.
Well, as a group, the first thing that we did was talk about what we had each discussed in our individual reports. And of course, we decided what we would each focus in on a little bit more. But when it came to creating the presentation, we talked about how things would be moved around in the presentation and structured. And after a couple of dry runs with how we wanted the presentation to go, we decided that we would actually remove a little bit of information that came from Grant's perspective on careers in secondary education and how to inform students about careers. And we decided to replace it with a little bit more background on home economics and a little bit more information from Victoria about sex education, because those applied a little bit more to our solution directly.
All right, thank you. Sarah, you're up next. In the future, what would you change about your group norms, and how would you expect that to improve your group?
What I would change about group norms is to make sure at the beginning that we emphasize and we establish all forms of contact available. In the middle of the presentation, I believe, we lost contact with Victoria for some time due to internet issues, and the only way we were able to contact her was getting her school email and not using her phone number, which she didn't have at that time. And this would improve our presentation as it would make it more quicker for us to get in contact with people that aren't in class, so we can be able to establish meeting times and times to keep able to practice and collaborate with each other and to make sure the presentation is the best it can be.
All right. And Grant, you're finally up. What was the strongest counter argument to your solution that you guys came up with?
The strongest counter argument would actually probably be what I wrote my paper on, as that schools already do provide career education and life skills classes, such as engineering maybe, or the Naval Academy Institution, as people can take these separate classes to go into their division of what they want to learn about, as well as what Maddie's presentation was about, or her slides on family and consumer sciences.
All right, and Victoria saved the best for last. Describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that makes you think differently about your team's conclusion.
One arguments from my teammates' reports would have to be Grant's, because he discussed in his report about the different how secondary schools already provide enough information about careers that help students who want to go in specific careers within secondary schools. However, this contradicts my findings and also Sarah's and Maddie's findings about how secondary schools need to prepare students for more life skills also.